So we're going to get started with the program, but feel free to continue to hop up and grab some food and some drinks. Is it not loud enough? Okay. I would like to start off by letting the legislators that are here with us today introduce themselves quickly if they'd like to stand up.
Good morning. My name is Chris Bray. I'm one of the two state senators. I live in Bristol. In the morning, I serve on I chair the Natural Resources and Energy Committee, and in the afternoon, I serve on
It seems like it's just you this morning. Maybe we'll have some more trickle in. So just a reminder on how the program works. So guests will have 2 minutes to ask a question or to make a comment. These questions can be directed at one specific legislature, or unfortunately, right now, it looks like Senator Bray might be the target this morning for the questions. And then all of the legislators will have 2 minutes to respond to each question if they wish. Once they finish, I will ask if there are any follow-up questions on that same issue before we move to the next question. And then just a reminder, the stoplight here does the 2 or the 3 minutes. So when it goes to yellow, just know that that is your reminder that your time is running low to wrap up your questions. We'll try not to spend more than 20 minutes on any given topic, just so that we can continue to move through anybody's questions. And that should kick us off this morning. So does anybody have anything?
I'll ask one.
All right, so when you, if you want to find your way to a microphone, and then when you ask your question, if you could just say your name and what town you're from.
Okay, my name's John Stroud. I live here in Vergennes. Good morning. I'm on the school board. I'm the chair of the school board, and I'm feeling a sense of dread about where we are. We're very vulnerable, everyone. We are vulnerable. We don't have a lot of programs, and it's tight. And our budget went down, and that means we have to figure some place to make cuts, and we just don't have a lot to do that. And I can make that argument. But I'm not going to ask about the school board or school budget or anything like that, Chris. I'm going to ask about, Diane came to visit us at our town meeting, and she talked about the stress that the legislators are under based on the flooding. And this seems like we are living in a new world that we are going to have to do. So I guess I'm asking you, because you work in this area, so what can we look forward to? What are we going to do? We're just going to wait for the insurance companies to say, no, you can't go there anymore, and that's going to solve our problem? Or is there going to be, is there a future of some changes that will help us build and become more resilient to this world we're going to live in? Thank you.
Thank you, John, for the question. When we had the floods before coming back for a session, it became a priority for the committee I chair, as well as for the Senate, to have a deep dive into how to respond in a productive way to the floods. Because as you point out, with climate change, record floods are now becoming a norm. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when and how devastating. So the July floods, last year's damage was a total of roughly $1 billion with a B dollars. And there are thousands of people who lost their homes, businesses were lost, people were traumatized. We were talking to a woman who is still traumatized enough that when it rains, she can't help but cry. It's like it was a devastating thing for many people. So there's no way we could possibly take it too seriously. And so our committee spent the first 7 weeks of the session learning a lot more about flooding. So So it really occurs in two distinct ways that are related. One is river corridors. So rivers tend to meander, everyone knows they move around. So if you're in a river, that space that it meanders in, that's referred to the river corridor, and then there's floodplains next to it. And 80% of the damage that occurs from a big storm is in the river corridor. But only 10% of towns have any kind of planning bylaws related to managing growth in river corridors. The state hasn't led on that, and so there's a large gap in terms of planning and regulation, in terms of trying not to build things basically in harm's way. And then in floodplains, it's more a question of not making flooding worse by filling in so much more in the way of that you raise flood levels and raise the floodplains. So to back all the way up, we said let's take a comprehensive look and developed a 5-year plan. It was a complicated topic. Basically, it says river corridors cross many, many town lines, and for instance, the Champlain Basin has 136 towns in the Lake Champlain Basin in Vermont. It includes every county other than Wyndham County and Essex County. So the only entity that can have a big enough view to see a watershed like that and help manage a watershed like that is the state. We've been leaving it to municipalities, and it's more than they can manage. Town governments don't have river scientists, et cetera, flood engineers. So the whole point of the Flood Safety Act, which we passed out 0 2 weeks ago, it's in the floor, addresses planning for river corridors, for floodplains. It also includes wetlands, because wetlands are large areas that act like a natural sponge to slow down and clean water. And then the fourth thing is we do have flood control dams in the state, and our current program is vastly overmatched. We have 1,100 dams and only one permanent full-time employee, two limited service people, so we're boosting staff. I see the red lights are on a while. I'll stop.
Are there more comments and questions? Follow-ups?
Senator, out of curiosity, do you think like regional planning commissions have a role in this, or are you looking at developing different entities to manage the corridors?
Thank you, Scott. So it's definitely it's an all hands on deck approach really. The state has the expertise, they have river scientists, et cetera, to help on the technical assistance side. They also have expertise in mapping. So the real work involves, and it includes the RPCs. So, and then it flows all the way down to the municipal level through technical assistance and programs to help towns. So the first step is mapping. We need good data. There are only about 20% of river miles have FEMA maps associated with them. FEMA maps are the ones that mark out flood hazard areas. And if your town has flood hazard area bylaws, then your town becomes eligible for the National Flood Insurance Program. If you don't do those bylaws, then the town's not eligible. So towns are highly motivated on behalf of their citizens to do that planning. But the FEMA maps are old. Many of them are out of date. We looked at maps that the river was no longer even in the FEMA map. It had moved so far. So step one is remapping, so we have good data for planning. Step two is then public outreach and engagement, and that is state with RPC, the regional planning commissions, plus the municipalities, the ground truth, all that work, bringing local knowledge about what's going on. And then the third phase is then changing the regulations to improve them. So the state is proposing model flood hazard area bylaws that will help improve flood resilience in those floodplains, and then it's also going to be drafting flood corridor rules for development. Again, the whole idea is that we've built a lot of things in harm's way. We're not talking about abandoning towns, but we do want to, abandoning village centers that are along rivers, but how can we lessen the damage? And that includes simple things like housing gets built and people put a garage on the ground level and the house above. So a basement is sturdy, concrete, etc. You can wash a basement back out without having the house destroyed. But, so there are a lot of different steps: elevation, hardening, and just good planning that helps people be out of harm's way. Because there's been some pushback from the administration about the expense. It's an estimated 16 people who do this statewide, but and about 4.9 million a year. But given that a single flood event can be $1 billion bill, we're thinking it's a smart investment, and not just smart, but also compassionate to help people again get out of harm's way.
Good morning. My name is Jessica Freed Heights, and I'm in Addison. Senator, I just have a follow-up question with regard to wildfire preparedness. Given what we've been through this year with the flooding and watching the wildfires from afar in Canada, I can't help but think, is this the next catastrophe headed our way in Vermont? So I'd just like to hear a little more detail about preparedness on that front.
Thank you. It's something we don't think about much in Vermont because in general, we think about it being probably too damp to have much in the way of fires. Well, we do have wildfires in Vermont. Happily, it's only on average about 90 acres a year. They're more spot fires. So we had the Commissioner of Forest Parks and Recreation in, and they have, there is a well-established program for managing fires. I don't think it's, I didn't hear, however, we didn't have an assessment of whether or not the kind of forest fire that got going in Canada could take off here. I think part of what's different out there is the tree cover, and you end up with a lot of, highly resinous trees like pine, that even when wet can combust. And so it's a little different climate, different trees, but for the time being, I will go over more, but we have a program. We haven't seen anything other than modest, small localized fires. Basically, often it's a brush fire that gets out of control and spreads into the wood.
Hello, my name is Scott Darley, and I live on the Addison-Bridgeport line, so where I'm from, you can figure it out. I can't. I feel funny asking Senator Gray about these things because he's just sitting next to me. But anyways, I quickly retired, 38-year wildlife biologist with the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department. Spent a lot of time managing deer, bear, and then the last 16 years trying to save Vermont's bat population. But I do have concerns about S-258, which is a proposal to change the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Board from a regulatory board over hunting and fishing issues to a broader advisory board for all policies and programs of the Fish and Wildlife Department. And my concern, Senator, is that I think the bill has a credibility problem. I think the way that the advisory panel will be selected is vague. I think the expectation is, frankly, that it's not going to be people who may have the best interests at heart in a broad view of Vermont's wildlife. And so I would really prefer to see that either taken off the table or addressed by either having designations of Vermont Audubon having seats at the table, or the Herb individuals having seats at the table, or the Nature Conservancy, etc., as opposed to being wide open. Because I feel the Speaker of the House and the Committee on Committees and you have way too much other bigger problems to deal with than spending time leafing through submissions for requests to be on this board that I just don't have faith in. The second thing would be, it is interesting to note that Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department is funded by only 7, am I done?
You are, if you want to see if there's any type of response, then you can go up your second half.
Okay.
If you want to split it
Okay,
up.
I'll give it to the senator.
We can take places back. Thanks, Scott. The bill that Scott's referring to is S-258. It revises the structure of the Fish and Wildlife Board. The state of Vermont has hundreds of boards, and with citizens who serve on them, they have lots of, like so many things in Vermont, we count on volunteer effort to get things done. And but those boards are almost entirely advisory boards. So there's a professional branch of government, like the Fish and Wildlife Department, or Agency of Natural Resources, Agency of Human Services, and they receive input and advice from an advisory panel of citizens, but they actually conduct all the business of government themselves in the department. And so this proposes to move all the rulemaking related to fish and wildlife into the department, which is staffed by really expert people like Scott and his former colleagues to do the rulemaking around fish and wildlife. And why do that? And it's for two reasons. One, the fish and wildlife of the state of Vermont is held in public trust on behalf of all of us, by all of us. And roughly these days, about 1 in 9 people hunts, but the Fish and Wildlife Board that advises on all that wildlife, game and non-game alike, is only people who are hunting. So there are a lot of people, conservationists, people that are interested in biology, wildlife biology, ecology, etc., that wish they had a voice on that board. So the restructured board simply says we split the board into, the language of the bill is more precise, I can go into it, but basically hunters and non-hunters, approximately equal number, 8 and 7, 7 and 8, 15-member board, a little bigger board, and that all those people participate in the conversations about how we manage this public trust resource. So my observation is that though people have been divided on their opinion about the bill, when I see them talking with each other in committee after committee, that they have far, far more in common than divides them. There has been frankly, some bitterness and back and forth, unfortunate things in social media that's become divisive. My sense is that you can never, to follow democratic principles, you want every voice at the table. Former Senator Bill Doyle used to say, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And I think there are people that feel like, they've been left out, and why can't I be part of it? This is actually a public trust resource. So that is the thrust of it. Again, it will take work and genuine heartfelt effort on both sides. But I have seen people with very contrasting views finally have a conversation in person, and barriers come down, and people realize that they, again, have much more in common. The last thing is I say, Vermont's quite small. Sometimes I think of it as a community or a family. You would never have a family meeting until 8 out of 9 people at the table, they cannot speak. So this is a chance for everyone to speak at the same time.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate the fact that Chris Ray has been at every legislative breakfast that we've had for a long time. He deserves a lot of thanks for coming out. I'm sure the kind of pressure we put on Chris when he comes is more than he really wants to have, but I'm sure that he listens and goes back and makes some decisions based on what he is hearing at our legislative breakfast. Chris, listening to you, your answer made sense, but for me as a person who pays taxes, how much will the bureaucracy cost that you're creating in this new board? A dollar figure.
Well, happily, I think the answer is 0. It's a volunteer board, So as is the current board, it expands from 14, which is one per county, to 15, because we have 3 entities appointed, so equal numbers 555. So there'll be 1 per county and 1 at-large member, but they are all volunteers on that board and always have been, and it's anticipated there'll be no change.
I could obviously have this conversation with Chris, but I thought it was important for people to know that the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department's budget is about $30 million right now. $7 million of that comes from general fund. So basically, you know, 2/3 of that budget is coming from my license dollars, the federal excise taxes when I buy any ammunition, the guns, fishing equipment, all that. And so this proposal could theoretically plan on having 2/3 of the advice, maybe the consent on fish and wildlife policies and everything, be from those who don't participate in those activities. And I think one ought to try to reconcile the funding difference with the influence difference in this law. All right?
Sure. So I don't have all the facts and figures, but hunting license, it is true that hunting licenses and then Pittman Robinson and Dingle Johnson funds, federal funds that flow to the state are federal taxes on things like ammunition, but it's also on sporting equipment. So those who are, and then I talked to plenty of people who shoot the target shoot, so they're not necessarily hunters. So there's a lot of people who aren't necessarily hunting who are paying into the funds that come to the state. There's also folks on the conservation side, those who buy habitat stamps, duck stamps, things like that. And roughly 20-something years ago, there were 44,000 hunting licenses sold that year. Now that number's down to about 17,000. So it is a declining number, and I think, you know, this is another aspect of the whole thing. I think expanding the conversation and bringing more people into it is important, as the percentage of the population that's hunting is a declining number. So I have great respect for hunting, positive about hunting. When people are out taking a deer, and that's part of their annual family tradition, a healthy way to feed yourself. You know? So this has nothing to do with, you know, hunting or not hunting. It's just that there's a much bigger group. All that wildlife is held in common trust. Again, I go back to, and in terms of numbers, so the board is, because it's 8 and 7, you can't say equal numbers, it says approximately equal number. So I think it will be an 8 and 7 board. But I hope that it doesn't turn out like that 8 and 7 matters, because I think people who come to it with a conservation or ecology or wildlife interest, as opposed to a hunting interest, can be just as productive a contributor to the public conversation about the management of fish and wildlife. The other thing I just want to be really careful about is, by transferring all the rulemaking to the department with full-time wildlife biologists like yourself and others writing the rules, it says that it must be based on science, and it needs to use the best science available, including peer-reviewed science. So we're looking for best scientifically based management practices for the healthiest possible wildlife. We're also trying to let more people participate in the conversation.
Any further comments or questions on that topic?
Yeah. Hey, Chris. Thanks for coming again. Seems like you always do show up. And I still have a couple questions. You're saying the current board is 14, 1 from each county. We're going to be going up to 15. Oh, we're going to be going up to 15 and things. Now, are you going to still keep getting people from all parts of the state? Will there be any one part of the state that's going to be more representative than the other?
No, so thanks, Charlie. So it's 14 now, 1 per county, and it will stay 1 per county plus 1 at large. So it goes from 14 to 15.
Okay. And I guess I'm still concerned about, you having people come that are maybe bird watchers and stuff. And it's nice that they have their opinion somehow in there, but I guess it concerns me that there's decisions that gotta be made on how to manage everything. And are they the right people to learn how to manage the deer herds, or, you know, have to say, hey, we gotta get rid of a bunch of the coy dogs and stuff. You know, you're gonna have some people that, hey, those are pretty, I like taking pictures of them, and things aren't really getting managed.
So thank you. So again, because we want to make sure that all the management decisions are based on science, not sentiment, the board is advisory only, and all the rulemaking is back with the full-time professionals in the Department of Fish and Wildlife, led by the commissioner. So there are already different opinions about how to manage everything. But this says, okay, we'll let people participate, they can advise, but they're not going to be in control. And currently the deer herd is not managed that way either. So we count on professional people to do the work, and it focuses on that very explicitly.
Thank you for that.
Mark Bowman, Addison, Vermont. I get concerned when I hear about all these boards. I own 500 acres of land, fee simple. I want the right to control my own land. And when you hear people with somebody living in an apartment going up there and saying, oh, I like coyotes, we can't chase them with dogs. They've never encountered a coyote snarling at them. I think I have more say as to what happens on my land than these people in any board, and I would like to have the credit for it. Last year I had 3 incidents. I had one person threaten me on my own land because I told him I didn't like what he was doing and to get off. The second person shot out some tractor windows. I couldn't get the police to come out and look at them for over a week. They didn't come out till 3 days after they shot out a second set of windows in a second tractor. As a landowner, I have to bear the entire cost. So when people come along and say, this is a state resource, they're full of bull. It's my resource. I should have the right to control it without some board of people that have absolutely no knowledge saying what should be done.
Mark, so obviously I'm very sorry to hear that you have, I don't know what's going on, and someone's shooting out windows out of your tractor. That has nothing to do with, I don't think, hunting, fishing, trapping, any of that from it. But I don't know that situation. At any rate, in terms of controlling your land, you always have the option to post, and you can post selectively. You can post for no trespass, you can post for no hunting, fishing, or trapping, or any combination thereof. You can also post safety zones. If you have problems with enforcement, then I think you know that it's be the time. If people are trespassing even when you're posted, then I think that's a good time to be calling law enforcement and the border service.
May I rebut?
Go ahead.
Okay, my land is posted. People ignore the signs. The people that are the worst ones are the bird watchers. So, without enforcement, the rules don't count. Thank you.
I'm going to change the subject. So my name is Carol Kaufman. I'm a resident of Addison. And my question is, you threw out the legislators down throughout the schools, the parents at the table. Right now there's an aggressive attempt to lower the consent age to 12 years old. So 12 years old, they are making decisions medically, reproductive choices. 12 years old, they want to keep the parent from seeing what the children are reading in the libraries. Injection sites is up at Montpelier right now. So 12 years old, as long as they're observed by someone who has some type of license, I assume from Planned Parenthood. Am I already on red? Wow, that's fast. So you're denying the parents' rights to direct their children's health care, library within the school, and I want to know, when are you going to focus on parental rights in Vermont?
You know, I think this is not I'm not on the education committee, so I'm not close to making this sort of policy. And probably, honestly, you know, this is a community meeting. I don't want to put John on the spot, but there are people on school boards who know far more about the details of management. But I think, in general, I'd say that there's, my understanding is we attempt to strike a careful balance between rights of the student in the school and the rights of the family to direct that person's education. Probably the strongest form of being able to direct one's education is to decide to place your child in the school of your choice. You know, and I think that's.
Are you a school choice person?
No, I'm saying there are people who that's what they decide to do. So they might choose a private school, or they might choose to homeschool, or they might choose a charter school. I mean, there's more than one. Families make their own choices in terms of the quote-unquote personality of that school.
I'll bite. There's a school board meeting tonight. And I don't have an answer to that question right now. But I do invite you to come to the school board meeting tonight at 6 o'clock. And I'll leave it at that.
Well, yeah, you just need to make your way to a microphone when you want to, talk.
Just on the same subject. Just a statement, the greatest social injustice, we talk a lot about social injustice, but the greatest social injustice is that parents who have money have choice. Parents can't homeschool. If you were to bring all the parents in from around the community and say, if you could get out of the public school system, I think you'd be surprised how many want out of the public school system. But all of my grandkids are out, they're being homeschooled, and it takes a commitment. It's unbelievable. And so, yeah, the greatest social injustice is that those who have money or the family support have choice.
This is a sort of, I'm Cheryl Mitchell from down the road in New Haven. This is a sort of related issue. Our town meeting was amazing. There were difficult and challenging discussions, but everybody was incredibly civil about what was going on. People are just struggling with how do we make sure that our kids get a good education and how do we make sure that the elders can stay in our communities because of the taxes. And as we talked to each other, it became clear some of these things need to be solved by the state. And one of the things that I wish we could maybe deal with soon is the cost of health insurance. It's really driving up our school budgets. It's something that I think the legislature could in fact deal with by passing a universal primary care bill this year, and then we could start adding some other expansions to that. But I think it's just like the river corridor issue. Some of these things our towns can't solve alone, and we need some help.
Hey, Chris, I like what you said there, where the parents can have a choice of where to send their kids. But then last year, Senator Hardy had a bill, I think it passed or whatever, that the vouchers for this, if you had a town with vouchers, now they can only send them to certain schools that the state picks. how come you did away with our freedom to go to different schools?
I'm not sure of I don't want to speak for Senator Harvey.
Yeah.
So I really, she has her own thoughts and expertise in the area.
Yeah, but did her bill go through where the vouchers can only be used for certain schools?
I'm sorry, you sound like you know more about it.
No, I don't. I just knew, I was opposed to it last year, so.
Yeah, I don't know that went through.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, Chris, for putting you on the spot for everything.
My utility infielder.
Just keep standing up, Chris.
Why don't we move a mic by you?
Cheryl brought up health insurance. So let me just continue that by one step. Wasn't there a proposal to save us some money on health insurance before the legislature over the past couple of years by giving health insurance or paying for health insurance for all the teachers in one big group? And wasn't that several $1 million worth of savings that we might have been able to get for ourselves and our local taxes?
So there were initial savings, like sometimes kind of economies of scale. We pool, you get a bigger insurance pool, and you can get a better rate because you're buying in bulk. And they saw initial savings, but I think as Cheryl was alluding to, across healthcare, I think, and John probably knows the details for this district, but I think schools are seeing healthcare costs rise of about 15% year over year right now, after single-digit increases for a number of years. So we continue to be stressed by healthcare costs, and it flows through to teachers and then into school budgets. So we all feel that pressure in terms of property tax. And the big challenge, everyone's aware that school budgets have been hard this year. And part of the first question is, well, why? Why so much harder now? So a couple major factors. There are many smaller pieces contributing, but there have been a lot of increases. So the budget, in rough numbers, from last year to this year, we're at $250 million. And if you look at budgets across the state, they range from increases anywhere from about 7% to 54%. Statewide average is about 15%. So we're seeing a huge cost increase. Some of that came because we had federal dollars to help us through the pandemic. Schools changed programming based on having those dollars, but they were not permanent. So now some schools are having to pare back in order to reduce staff and expenses because they no longer have federal funds. At the same time, there's that upward pressure coming out of increased insurance costs. So even if you're trimming staff, you're still getting pressure from the other side. So we are, there has been a conversation for years about how to make education more affordable, and the conversation, 70% of us pay based on income, not property tax. And some people would like to make it 100% based on income. But it's the one thing, it's the largest investment we make as a state is in public education. It's an essential investment. It's required by our Constitution. But we are definitely struggling because we're a very rural state, very small schools, and relatively high cost to operate many small schools. But if you ask a town with a small school, I've lived in a number of them, they love that school and it's the heart of the community. So they don't want to just see kids shipped out to a regional school. It's a debate we're having with each other, a discussion, and there's definitely no simple answer.
That's true.
But if there was a debate and there was democracy, parents would be at the table. I'd like them here, and I know they're not. And taxpayers would get the options that they have. And whether Vermont likes it or not, one of the growing options throughout the United States is school choice. And so why can't ANWSD bring in the experts on school choice and say, okay, what could you give the parents and at what cost? And then let the state do it and let the, and let the voters have their options.
So we still have a very strong local control component to education in Vermont. The main state role is in funding education. And since Act 60 passed, I think it was 1997, it said that every child has to have access to approximately equal quality of education, and that the tax burden should be equalized as well, in essence. And because at that time there were great inequities. Wealthier towns could have a much better school with a lower tax rate than a poorer town. So in essence, we said, you know, all of Vermont, we're so small, we're going to treat it as one town, and we raise money as though it's one grand list for one town, and then we fund every kid in that town. But there are still a lot of conversations at the local level on how any particular school is managed and where kids go, and what the schooling options are.
I don't know if you've noticed or not, when you get a bill from your insurance company that tells what they paid and so forth, but I've had a couple of incidents when I've been in the hospital, had a procedure, and then when the bill comes out, instead of charging for 2 times in that machine, they charge for 3. So I said, well, we're trying to save money in our insurance, what's going on? So I called the hospital. Nobody can give me a reason for that. So then I called Blue Cross Blue Shield in Montpelier, and they said, well, we usually pay what the hospitals send us a bill for. So I think hospitals and the way they have to run their organizations, and I know they're paying more for nurses because we have a lot of nurses that are coming from other places because we don't have enough here, and they pay a premium for those nurses. And we've got to pay the health care just like we have to pay teachers. Cost of everything goes up, everything else goes up. But the insurance companies are really working with the medical system. And of course, when their premiums go up, that's the reason for it, because they have to pay what the usual customary rate is. So it's fitted into the budget that way so they can survive. And, lucky we have it, and there's really no way of doing it because I don't think that taxpayers in Vermont can really dish out more money for taxes. And it's going to happen this year because, Chris, 20% maybe?
So taxes, there is a formula that gets calculated in late fall, and the letter comes out in November from the tax commissioner. It says, based on the preliminary estimates of all this, so step one back, but the way we come up with the taxes to fund education, there are a number of different streams, but the big number that we raise is based on adding up every school budget around the state, and then the state finds a way to raise that money. So as to get a sneak preview, in the fall they collect preliminary budget information, add it all up, and say, okay, if we're going to fund education at that level, looking at the current way we're raising money, we'll have to have an increase of X, Y, or Z. It turned out to be 18% this past year, which was a sticker shock for everybody. And but we were just talking about the $250 million increase, 15% more in healthcare, a lot of things going on. So it's untenable to have everyone in Vermont have a bill of 18% more. So we did a number of things, but one of which was to allow towns to move and revote budgets. So a third of budgets did not pass. So we're going to end up recalibrating to see what the new lower total is, and we'll see lower increases. I don't know what that number will be yet. And I think we're looking at ways to try to do some phasing so there's less of a jump in any single year. But again, where the state's position in this is that it is the respondent to the local decisions, school board by school board, and then it's our task to come up with the best way to raise those funds, the most equitable way.
So Chris, did the legislature suspend Act 127 with a 5% cap for spending? If they suspended it, then the school board could go ahead and give us a new budget.
So the change was, you're referring to a 5% cap in growth of costs with school. What was, and that was a feature that got added very late last session, and it did not control spending as it controlled costs. So a school budget could go up by more than 5%, it could go all the way to 9.9. But the cost to the school district would only go up 5. So that ended up creating an unintended consequence of, instead of it being a cost cap so that we control costs, some schools saw it as an opportunity. We'll only get billed for 5%, but we could go all the way basically to 10. And that was the way it played out in many districts. And so we're trying to reverse that so that we don't have a perverse incentive to say you can spend more without being taxed, seeing that full cost on our own budget.
And so what about schools like right here in Vergennes, where we had a $1.1 million surplus? They taxed us, we put our money in, and they didn't need it. So by overtaxing the public to the 9% cap, does that mean that we're going to, that means that it equalizes better across the state somehow?
Are you voting for Vergennes in this?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So,
They also, I hope, are recounting, because it was only a 4-vote margin on passing that, the spending of the surplus.
well, I think John Fitzgerald's chair, that maybe he actually wants to say something or not.
I wanted that to come out in the open.
I don't know. I mean, all right. Look, I'll take a little from Chris. Thank you for being here talking about all of these things. Everybody, I don't know how many people live in this community in the Addison Northwest, but if you live in the Addison Northwest School District, our school budget did not pass by the voters. The school board presented one, and it didn't pass. And we also presented we have to ask the taxpayers what to do with the surplus of 2023. And we had a surplus of 2023 because essentially we received much more money from the federal government than we thought that we would. And also this was like just after COVID and still professional development. Like teachers weren't taking the trips that they needed to do to go learn in far enough other places, so we just didn't spend the money that we would have. So we had about 1.2 million. So we had to ask for what to do with that. We decided to put it into a building fund to help, because we want to support our buildings. And that passed by 4 votes, everyone. So yeah, I mean, somebody could ask for a recount. I mean, you probably, there's no reason that you couldn't do that. I believe they counted it a few times to make sure. So we, as a district, we have to enter into a new set of discussions to figure out what kind of budget we're going to be able to create to present back to our voters so that we can have a budget to fund our schools. And that'll be happening really soon. There's lots of interacting pressures, like, for example, our collectively bargained contract requires us to let people know if we are going to keep them on staff by a certain time. And if we don't know what our budget is like, that means we have to let an awful lot of human beings that we are neighbors with, let them know that they could possibly lose their job, whether they will or will not, right? So like, we're under a lot of pressure to get this done pretty quick, which I can tell you we're going to talk about tonight. In fact, I'm actually not the chair right now. We're reorganizing tonight. Maybe I'll be the chair. But look, so like there's a lot, like we're going to keep having discussions about schools, there's no doubt, and property taxes. So please join in. We do have Chris here for one more minute, and I don't know, maybe we'll get to the end. But I have one quick question about something that, that I know you are an expert in. I am concerned, I love Vermont the way that it is, and I know that Act 250 has been instrumental in making this state a beautiful state and us collectively thinking about how we use and what our resources look like. But I'm also concerned that about housing and development, and for 20 years, the Addison Northwest School District, 20 years, we saw zero population growth. Zero. 2 censuses in a row. It's just extraordinary. We have not grown. We have to find some way to grow our population to keep up. So what's the status of the Act 250 and what can we look forward to? I know you're trying to figure this out.
John, so Act 250, everyone's probably familiar with it to some degree. Passed 1970, 54-year-old land use planning bill that said, in essence, let's be thoughtful about how we grow and develop Vermont. Let's try to keep green spaces green, and let's develop in our village centers, towns, cities, etc. And maintain that really relatively unique balance of a green working landscape and people in developed areas. Last year we passed the Homes Bill, Act 100, that for areas it said, okay, in areas where we're already developed, that have earned designations from the state, so we think of designated downtowns, village centers, urban development areas, new growth centers, new town centers. If a town's done planning on that kind of thing, then let's take off Act 250 restrictions now. And I should just say that, Act 250, I'm sorry to say, so often people come into it with a bit of a sour attitude, like it's saying no. 99+% of projects actually get an Act 250 permit. They do get it with some conditions, and those conditions are designed to make it better sited, manage traffic better, use resources better, all those sorts of things. So I think it has been improved many, many projects. But there are cases where a appeal on a permit will slow something down and be very obstructive. So every legal process can be, I think, abused. And I think there are some times where someone just does not want to see development in their area, and they will slow the project down. But happily, I think that's relatively far and few between. But those stories have an inordinate weight in a lot of people's minds when they hear it. So what we're doing, we're saying that good planning is good planning. It can happen at the local level, municipal level, it can happen at the regional level and state level. So there's what we're trying to do is empower municipalities to do more of their own planning. And last year we took off for affordable housing projects. In state jargon, they're called priority housing projects. That means at least 20% of the units in any priority housing project are legally defined as affordable, lower rent, lower cost. The other 80% can be market rate. We lifted limits, so there's actually no Act 250 trigger for an unlimited number of units in everything other than a village center. And we've seen more priority housing projects going in, I think, as a result of that streamlined planning. But the balance we're trying to maintain the best of what Act 250 offers, thoughtful development that in our long-term best health, and to keep the Vermont that we value, but also not have any unnecessary cost or time delays. I think we will be moving thresholds further this year, and we'll also be engaging in trying to make Act 250 more responsive. It's been a great asset, but it's a tool we have to keep tuning. And I hope that we'll see more housing starts. The part of the last thing I would say quickly is that so much of what's making it hard to build housing isn't necessarily the permanent process. It does come in for criticism, but some fair, some unfair. But it's right now we have high costs of money again. Mortgage rates are up, and so if the average house is starting to be in the neighborhood of 500,000, so if you're going to put 20% down, that's 100,000 in the bank just to get to go to the bank for your mortgage. Not that many families have 100,000 stashed away, ready to make that initial down payment. I work as a carpenter outside of the normal legislative session, and I know every crew that is out is busy, busy, busy. So there are not a lot of people around to be building all this housing work. So we have workforce programs trying to get more kids interested in the trades and professions from the high school level right up, and get more people into the trades. Probably I was smart to become a plumber a long time ago, but I wasn't that smart. So we're working on it in terms of making it more affordable, making the permitting and planning more streamlined, making helping the workforce develop. We do have things that will help bring people here. I think we're improving child care in the same time. And although we're having a debate about schools, but I often hear people say great things about our schools. I live in Bristol Village, and I've met numerous families pushing a kid down the street in the stroller and say, why do you move to Bristol? And they say, because of the schools and the community. So we have a lot to offer, and I think we should have faith in the fact that we're on the right track.
Hey there, Chris. Thank you. I got to head off to work, but I want to thank you again for coming in these, poor weather conditions. A little disappointed others can't come. This has been a tradition on Monday since the mid-80s or so. Tried a couple Saturday meetings. They didn't really work. So thank you for coming out here. But I have one more question. Maybe it's more towards you.
Oh, no.
Yeah, sorry. I got a good friend of mine that lives here in Vergennes, spends part of the time in Florida. Now he's going to become, I think, a full-time citizen there and everything. And he says a big part of it is just all the taxes in the area and things like that. And then, I've heard you're redoing all the bathrooms here in Vergennes, and is that more elective-like type of thing? And if it is, why are you doing that? Because you're saying, hey, we're going to have to maybe lay off some teachers or something. Isn't it better to keep the teachers, and maybe if the bathrooms are functioning, just keep them and keep the personnel that are teaching the students instead of where they're going to the bathroom?
Okay.
Sorry to put you on the spot. I know I put you on the spot.
That's going to go to work too.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to go. I'll say, it's okay. Thanks to Tim Buskey, there is now a very clear document on our website that's kind of a one-pager of a really long spreadsheet of all of the maintenance issues that we have in all of our schools. And we work on that. We have a committee there, the facilities committee. They function probably like the legislative committees that Chris is on. And we've worked really hard on trying to figure out, and hey, let me say this is important. The Addison Northwest School District, our buildings are in relatively good shape. There is a huge problem. Anybody could ask Chris right now and say, Chris, what are we going to do about our school buildings across this entire state? Because it's big trouble, folks, for all of us across the state. It's going to cost each of us to try to figure out what we do with these buildings. So we have long story short, we have a really long maintenance plan. Right on that list of maintenance issues is the just problematic grossness of our bathrooms in the elementary school and in the high school. And it rose on the list, and it's time to take care of it. They get used, like it's not like a roof, you got 30 years in your roof, right? And you know, like it's like 20-something years and there's a lot of pressure points on it. So it's time to do it. The funding for that comes from our capital improvement plan, our capital funds, which are entirely separate from our general fund for our budget.
Yeah, but still taxes, you gotta pay taxes at the end of the day. So it doesn't matter which fund you get it from.
Fair. I accept the criticism. Thank you.
Well, it is a criticism,
It's okay.
you just brought it up, but,
It's okay.
well, I guess why are you doing the extensive remodel versus just fixing it and maintaining it?
Well, and for a number of reasons. We're redoing the bathrooms at both the high school and at the elementary school, Vergennes Elementary School, and because there's better models, and once you get in there to start making the work happen, we can improve on how our bathrooms have functioned and looked and served our entire population. And there's better models, and so we looked around to try to figure out, what would be in the range of, cost effectiveness. Like, we're not making gold-plated, sinks, but to make so this is a pretty good effort to bring our bathrooms into the 20th century. We're talking about bathrooms here.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got to go. Thank you, Chris, for coming.
I'm sorry to put you on.
That's all right. That's okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Since you're talking about bathrooms, just understand that maybe in some folks' minds this is a better way to go, maybe in other folks' minds it's kind of silly. But they're talking about mixed bathrooms, boys and girls, at the age of puberty, in a mixed bathroom area, is what they're talking about, with no walls to the hallway. And it's going to cost $875,000 out of that capital plan. So just something to think about. I was kind of hopeful that the school board might reconsider, but I haven't got an answer to that.
It's equity, right?
Good luck. Good luck, Chris.
Don't go. He's left you. Thank you again, Chris.
Are we still on bathrooms or not? Mark Bolton, I have a problem. Last Tuesday, I went to vote. And I had to declare whether I was a member of the Democratic or Republican Party in order to vote. The right to vote is an absolute right, not granted by the state, but by the Constitution. And in order to have, and we also have the right to associate or not associate with whoever we want. To force me to associate, even ephemerally, with one party or the other is a violation of my constitutional right of association, or a violation of my right to vote. The state funds these elections. If I am independent, as people will tell you I am, to have to pay taxes in order to fund what the Supreme Court in Democratic Party versus Wisconsin says is a private entity, then that's a violation of the First Amendment by forced speech, by funding these private institutions as part of the state and requiring them to be limited to the people that associate with them is a violation of 3 different parts of the Constitution. The reason we did that is because when I talked to Jim Candos, the former Secretary of State, it was because of Democratic Party versus Wisconsin, where the Democratic Party decided they would not recognize any candidate with an open primary. My solution is each of the parties, if they want a private party, they fund it. They pay and reimburse the state for running the election. Or the state will have one ballot But anybody that gets more than 30% on the ballot will be on the November ballot for president. They can take their chances then. But we can't be taking federal money, or state money, tax money, and forcing people to provide that money and giving it to run a private organization with political parties. Thank you.
We have a couple minutes left. Are there any other comments or questions?
There's one thing I forgot to say. If anybody wants to take the federal suit on this issue, give me a call and I'll help support you.
I just want to make a comment about Chair Strong said the surplus was because of revenue come from the government. Surpluses, and I'll have it on a sheet tonight. Surpluses are happening in our district because the school board is over projecting their budget, right? So they don't talk about actual spending. If you look at the trends of actual spending from FY18 until 23, it rose about $1 million. But in proposed spending, it's just skyrocketing, creating surpluses that they're bringing in from state money, and then they're asking you to vote for capital, or they're asking you, or they're putting it into a 4% slush fund.
This is a different topic. I think we've heard lots of people say thank you to Chris for coming consistently, traditionally, and I just also wanted to say thank you to the Grange for keeping this tradition alive, and thank you to St. Peter's and the people that prepared this great breakfast for us. It's a really valuable tradition. We often don't have time to get together and talk. So thanks to all of you.
If there aren't any further comments or questions, I would just like to say thank you for everyone who came, and again, thank you to Senator Bray, and thank everyone for bearing with me with my daughter as I was attempting to moderate today. Thank you to the organizations between the Bridgeport Grange and Addison County Farm Bureau. They're the ones that sponsor the event. Also, feel free to either organization's meetings. Addison County Farm Bureau does have a meeting this Thursday. We meet at 6:30 at the New Haven Fire Department on Thursday evening this week, and that's open to all members of the staff members also. So thank everyone for coming today, and have a great day, and drive safe. Oh yes, sorry. The next legislative